Welcome, everybody. This is the MyTac Pasta Talk, hosted by me, Anthony Snapfar Farrell, and Jess, the Oceanic Librarian, Jordan. We are here coming to you from Cape Cod, where Jess takes care of all of the librarian users at what university?
Cape Cod Community College.
Cape Cod Community College. But in addition to being a librarian who knows books back and forth, she also knows pasta a lot better than I do, and I know pasta pretty decently. So we are going to teach you how to make 3 different kinds of dough, sort of. We'll talk about that. We've made a few swaps. It's going to be really fun. And we're going to teach you how to make at least 3 shapes of pasta. We're going to talk about a 4th. And if you've got any questions about any other dough shapes that we are familiar with, we'll try to answer them too. So if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat at any time, and my colleagues in the MyTac office will let us know that there's a question. But we're going to get started here, and we're going to swap over so that you can see our workspace.
Pasta can.
Ta-da!
Excellent. Well, welcome, everybody. So as Anthony mentioned, we do have a couple of different doughs, which we'll talk about in a minute. The one that we're going to show on camera how to make is the spinach pasta dough. Before we started today, all I did was I took, I think, about 12 ounces of spinach, fresh spinach, and I salted it and cooked it down so it would get nice and wilty in this nice, beautiful dark green color. And I've just been letting it cool so I can actually touch it. The first thing we're going to actually do with this is we're going to squeeze as much of the liquid out of here as possible, and then we're going to make a puree out of it. So I've just got this in some cheesecloth because I had some. You can use a towel or you can just hulk it. Use your hands, use your strength, and just do it as you need to.
That's generally what I end up doing.
I mean, that's what I was gonna do. But then you reminded me I had cheesecloth
Well,
from
when you
all
have
my other
beautiful
hobbies.
cheesecloth, why not use it?
Yeah, and this is nice fine cheesecloth, so I'm not going to be losing pieces, but I'm going to be getting a lot of the moisture out of here, which we don't want.
And we don't want that excess moisture in our pasta dough because wetness is what causes dough to stick to itself. Sometimes that's helpful if you're having trouble sealing your raviolis. You can put a little bit of water on your finger and run it over wherever you're trying to make that seal happen, and it'll make your pasta dough stick better. But of course, this is going to be our filling. And so if that liquid is still in the pasta, the spinach, when it goes into the pasta, you run the risk of making it,
not the filling.
Yeah. Oh, it is going into the pasta.
Ha-ha.
Since it's going into the pasta directly and not the filling, you don't want that stickiness to actually be absorbed by your pasta dough. It's going to make it really difficult to handle. It might make it stick to everything. You might have to add too much flour. It's going to throw everything off. So getting that moisture out early is really going to be really helpful and end up with a more successful pasta dough.
Again, what I do want people to understand about pasta is anyone can do it if you have at least two working hands usually, but I mean, if you have one, go for it.
You can actually do it with one.
There you go.
Hand. You
I've never tried. You don't need any special tools or even really any special knowledge. Just, isn't that beautiful? That's what I love about pasta is it's very hard to mess up, but kind of knowing what you're looking for is also helpful. So this is what I've got left. This is beautiful. I'm just going to put that into, I've got a magic bullet. Don't go too far with that. I ain't done with it yet. I have an overzealous sous chef over here.
I know.
I've got a magic bullet, but if you have a food processor, a blender, anything like that would be helpful. If you don't have that, you can chop like a crazy person and get this as fine as possible. At this point, I'm just trying to get this to be very fine. Otherwise, you're going to get these strands in the pasta, which will just make it, again, difficult to work with. To get this started, I put it in the cup and I start it with an egg. That will help add more moisture back in, but it will actually help the gravity to puree it down for me. Boop. I'm just going to sit there. Then at this point, Anthony is going to take my magic bullet and process it.
Absolutely.
Have fun.
We've got our second camera over here with all of our fun, fancy tools, and it's going to be loud, so you might not be able to hear me for quite some time.
actually going to add another egg to that because that's not doing what I wanted it to do. Trying to see what we've got to work with here, because what we're shooting for is a puree, a paste, something with not a lot of chunks in it. So I'm actually going to get my hands right in there, and that's actually not bad. But since we've already got the other 2 eggs in there, I'm just going to throw the other one in. We're going to finish processing it.
Anthony, for those who are just joining us, do you want to give a quick update? You're just working on the filling, correct?
No, actually, what we're working on first is we're working on the spinach. It's going to go into our pasta dough that we're going to make with you today. It's going to be a spinach pasta dough. So this is the reason we're getting it so fine is because it's going to be a part of that dough that we are going to roll out into ravioli last in the presentation. We've also got our 2 pre-prepped pasta doughs over here that we'll talk about in a bit, but our filling is actually going to be a 6 cheese filling. We sent that recipe out. You can either use a mozzarella or a 6 cheese Italian blend like we've got here. So that's going to be just a cheese filling.
And it's actually like 8 cheeses when you really add it together. I'm going to blend a little bit more here. Look at that beautiful color. That's what I love about this dough. All right. So for those of you who couldn't see it over there, nice, beautiful dark green color. So this is going to be the liquid for our dough. Actually open that. All right. So what we're going to do, I like to do my pastas in a bowl. You can, if you want to do it really traditionally, you can actually mound your pasta onto your work surface, form a well, put your liquid in, and hope it doesn't go everywhere. I don't like it going everywhere, so I usually start mine in a bowl. And for this one, this is going to be using all-purpose flour, 2 1/3 cups of all-purpose flour. And I think Anthony mentioned at one point that pasta making isn't like baking. It's not, you don't need to be as precise. So I'm not going to be super precise with my measuring as I probably could be. One thing that I find really fascinating about pasta is that the pasta dough will come out differently depending on your weather, where you're located, as well as, in this case, the size of your eggs. If you have a really humid day, you're going to have a stickier pasta, which is interesting. If it's really dry, you're going to have to add more liquid to your pasta because all of that liquid is not all, but the liquid is getting evaporated out. It's interesting. I love the science behind it.
They're very fun challenges to contend with.
It is. So really with pasta making, it comes down to it comes down to feel more than measurements.
And the flour that we're working with here is all-purpose flour, as you can see in our spinach pasta dough. We'll talk a little bit later about some of the other flours that you can use for pasta if you want to. But all-purpose flour is perfectly fine to use for most shapes of pasta and most recipes that you're going to have.
Yep. It'll make a perfectly good dough. It's relatively easy to work with, but can be a little bit softer and tends to be a bit stickier, at which point just add more flour. So I'm just going to make a little bit of a well because I'm going to show you guys how you would start this if you don't have a mixer. So I've got a well in here, and this is where I'm going to put the liquids, which is my 3 eggs and my spinach puree here. There we go. You can really see how beautiful that green is. That's what I really love about this recipe. Grab me a spoon, please. Because trying to get this out with a fork is not working. Thank you. There we go. There, that's good enough. And here, you can take that too. All right, so I've got my liquid and I'm going to flavor this. I did put some salt in the spinach, but I'm going to put just a pinch more salt in here, again, just for flavor. And I think it supposedly helps with texture. I've never really proven that at all.
Jess, do you ever make, or Anthony, if you could ask Jess, do you ever make pasta dough without eggs?
I have, yes. You could do this without eggs. I've never really tried all purpose without eggs. And I'm going to talk about a couple of other flours that I have used while we're mixing this. And a lot of them are actually just water, flour, oil, and salt. So you don't have to use eggs. So I'm just going to start mixing this. And the idea, especially when you have just egg or just water, is you want to slowly incorporate it until a bit of a shaggy dough starts to form. And it's sticking to everything. What's also fun about pasta is you're going to be getting your hands in there at some point, no matter what method you use. It's going to look really dry. And again, it could be, I'm going to have to add more water to it later. I have water in case I need it. But for the most part, kind of trust the recipe until it gets to form a dough. This looks very, very dry. It's still absorbing all of that moisture. And at this point, if I wasn't going to use a mixer to make things go faster, I would be getting in here with my hands and start using the hands to start getting it together a little bit more.
But because we want to keep things quick.
Yes, because this process can take a while. We're going to speed it up by using a stand mixer, which Anthony is going to take this and do that. I do want to mention, if you don't have a stand mixer or if you don't want to do it by hand, you can make your dough in a food processor as well. I know that's what my mom uses. She uses her food processor, puts all the ingredients in and pulses it until a dough starts to form. And then she takes it out and then she kneads it. The joy of the food mixer is that it's going to do a majority of the kneading for me. I'm going to do a little bit of kneading at the end to get the any loose pieces together and getting it so I can wrap it to let it rest. But I'm really excited. This is my first time actually using my mixer to do this. So I'm really excited about this right now. Okay, while he's doing that, get this off to my side there. I want to talk about the doughs that we're going to be looking at, as well as the flours that I've used for them. If you don't have them already, you will have the recipes for all of the doughs and the filling that I make today. The most simple and the basic, I would say, is probably this semolina dough. And the recipe that I use, I took exactly from Bob's Red Mill's flour, semolina flour. So this is probably the simplest. This is what I started using. Okay, we'll do it this way. This is what I started using when I don't know which way it's supposed to be, upright, is it that way? When I started making pasta, I started out with Bob Red Mill's semolina. The recipe is pretty accurate in terms of the liquid amount versus the flour, which is really helpful when you're first starting out because it takes a lot of the guessing out of it in terms of the consistency you're looking for, the amount of moisture that you're looking for. If you're first starting out with pasta and you can get Bob's Red Mill semolina, I recommend that being where you start. You can get Bob's Red Mill from a bunch of different places. You can get it online. I got mine from Ocean State Job Lot, which is where I've always gotten mine from. And it's a couple bucks and you can get quite a bit of pasta out of it. I don't even think I used a half a bag to make the dough that I made yesterday. So that's the semolina dough. Yes, sir.
I'll take a look at this and see if it needs some liquid. What we're doing here is we're using the pasta dough. We're using the dough hook. Generally, we would start this out with a paddle if you wanted it to come together quickly, but we're going to finish it on the dough hook anyway, and we're not in a particular hurry to have it all come together. But you can see, even without adding water, that moisture has really made this dough come together quite a bit. We do still want it to form up into a ball, so we are going to need to add a little bit of moisture in to help that happen. But add too much water and your pasta dough is going to get a little too sticky. So you want to be a little generous with the flour, give it its, a little generous with the dough, give it its time to work, give it its time to figure out what it wants to do and see if it's going to come together with just adding a little bit of water before you go too crazy. So we'll get that started up again.
So all I did was I added about a tablespoon or so of water because I'm trying to get it to come together. I still think we're going to have to add more flour to it later, but it sounds like it's coming together now. Oh yes, I think it's coming together now. Okay, so that's still doing its magic over there. It's going to go flying out of that mixer, and I'm going to laugh.
I'm just going to scrape down the sides of the bowl, but I'm going to take this off and bring it over here to show you a little clearer. This is what it looks like when it starts to come together into a dough ball. So at this
And that's
point,
actually too sticky, so we're going to have to add flour to that. So ideally, I don't know how well you can see, I just pinched it a little bit and I've got residue on my hand from the dough. That's telling me it's too moist. Sorry if people don't like that word, I apologize. But that's also not a problem because we're just going to add more flour to it when we're kneading it, when we're rolling it out. Like, we're going to have so much flour in this thing, it's going to be crazy. But at this point, is it sticking to the sides of the bowl right now?
not by much, no.
Okay, so we're going to let that knead for a couple of minutes. You know, let the machine do some of the heavy lifting here. And then I'm going to talk about the red wine dough that we decided to make kind of last minute.
Actually, before we
Yes.
do that, we did get one question from the chat. Somebody joined late. What would you do if you did not have a mixer? So we can go over how you would do this kneading process by hand. If you don't have a mixer and you're just starting your dough, what you're going to do is you're going to put all of your flour that your recipe calls for, spread it out on your workspace and make a little well in the center. And then all your wet ingredients go into the middle of the well, and you're going to try to incorporate them slowly, incorporate the flour slowly into the dough until it becomes manageable enough to hold like this. The reason I don't like doing that is because every single time I've put together a well of flour with eggs in the middle, the dam has broken and the eggs have gotten all over my workspace. So because I also own a mixer, oh boy, I try to avoid doing it by hand whenever I can.
You could also do it in a bowl. I don't like the mess that doing it in a well on the work surface works for me. Because again, it makes a mess. So you can do that whole process in a bowl using a fork to incorporate it and then getting your hands right in there. And I mentioned before that you could also do all of this in a food processor. Put all of the ingredients in the food processor, pulse it until it starts to kind of form. It'll eventually start to form something that looks like this. And I'm going to add a little bit of flour to it before we put it back over there to knead. But once you get it to this point, you can start kneading it by hand by making sure that your surface is floured, because you do want more flour, this will get absorbed. And for those of you who don't know how to knead or haven't had the opportunity, you're going to use the palm of your hand. You're going to fold the dough up, use the palm of your hands to push down and out. What this is doing, and then you're going to turn it and just keep the process up for a while. What this is doing is this is forming the gluten, which is going to help with the texture. It's going to help when we roll it out later. It's going to keep it from breaking and all of that fun stuff. To me, this is very meditative to knead. Again, the mixer, we're going to put this back in the mixer to do a lot of the kneading because it would take quite a bit of time to do it by hand. And we just, for the sake of time today, we don't really want to do that. But to get a good elastic dough, you want to do about, I think, 10 minutes of kneading. You'll have guns of steel when all is said and done. And actually, I think just that little bit of flour might have done what we needed it to do.
Excellent. And for anybody that did join us late, if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. I'm watching, and if I ever don't see your question, my colleague Jody is here to answer your questions for you as well, or to bring it to us to answer. So we're going to plop this right back in that mixer. It is the dough hook. Nice eagle eyes there. We are using the dough hook,
Yes.
and we're going to put it on just a bit of a slow mix here.
That's a bit too fast. One notch down.
One down.
There you go.
And while I babysit this, I think, Jess, you're going to talk about our red wine dough.
Yes, we're not whipping the pasta dough, so don't need to go too
Real quick
fast on
before
it. But
you-
what's good about, oh, did I hear someone?
Yes, sorry, just there's a question before you talk
Sure,
about the red
what's up?
wine. How do you know if you've kneaded it enough?
Your arms are sore. Not really. When it's done, I will actually show you what it's going to look like. And there is a poke test that you can do to actually see what it's supposed to do. And I will show that before we let it rest. So yes, good question. Just a little ahead of the game here. So the other dough we did was a red wine dough. This recipe will be coming to you guys later. Very simple. The only thing that was different was we reduced the red wine a little bit. We started out with, I think it was a cup of dark red wine. And we put it on the stove and we let it simmer until it was about a half a cup, basically to concentrate the color and the flavor. And then this one actually used, you can do this with all-purpose flour for one, but you can use what is known as 00 flour, which is traditional, more traditional in terms of making pasta. You'll hear a lot of people saying that they're using 00 flour. All that, from my research, all that really implies is the grind. It's a very fine, I would say almost finer than an all-purpose, but an all-purpose is an okay substitute for most doughs. This flour is one that I definitely could just make a water, salt, and oil dough. In other words, you could do an egg-free dough with that. I don't remember the ratios for that off the top of my head, but I can look that up and I can also send that to share out because that's also a fun dough and very simple and easy to make. So this is what we used for the red wine pasta dough. But again, you can use all-purpose for that as well. This flour, I think my mom got this from like an Italian market, but you can find stuff like this on Amazon, no problem usually. All right, let's take a look.
Yes, could you just hold that up facing away from you?
Away from me.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. I couldn't figure out which direction it had to go.
Yes.
So I've got a couple of different types of 00 flour. You can also, I've also done a, oh, that's beautiful. I've also used an actual pasta flour mix. I don't remember the brand, but that also worked pretty good. So you can use pretty much everything, anything that you have.
And there are a couple of recommendations of where to find these flours in the chat right now. Wegmans, Market Basket, a couple different options.
Oh yes, definitely.
Market Basket is also fantastic for finding this. Ooh, where'd the semolina go? Oh, red mill semolina flour and the other kinds of flours that we suggest. If you're making the gluten-free pasta dough that we sent out ahead of time, the gluten-free pasta mix that Red Mills makes is fantastic, and Market Basket is where I found that. So,
Oh, that's good to know.
excellent place to check out.
All right, so at this point, just to show you, the bowl is pretty much clean, just a little bit of flour residue in there. That's what you're really looking for if you're using a mixer. So we're going to get that out of the way. We're going to take a look at this. So at this point, I'm going to knead it to make it a little bit smoother, just to make sure everything is the way you want it to be. But at this point, I'm touching it It's not sticky. It's not falling apart. That's really what you're looking for. In terms of knowing if you've kneaded it enough, I do the poke test, which is, and I'm not sure how it's going to work right now, but you poke it and it should spring back a little bit. I don't know if you can see that, but it does spring back a little bit. That's how you know that that's a good place to go.
One question, can you over knead dough? And what does that look like?
I am yet to over knead dough. That's what's awesome about pasta dough, is it's very hard to mess it up. I have, when I make my ravioli, I will reuse the scraps, and you will start to notice that the dough is going to get very tough. It's just going to be a chewier dough. I've never actually been able to over knead a dough. So if you do, please send me pictures, because I'm curious to see how that works.
And again, one of the things that's happening when you're kneading dough is you're just developing the gluten strands within it.
Mhm.
So with a pasta dough like this that we will be rolling through our rollers, we have to pass it through the roller a couple of times to get it down to the thinness that we want. And if you over knead your dough, you might see that you just need to pass it through the machine a couple more times. It might be more difficult to roll out if you're rolling it out by hand. That's where you're going to see most of the effects of adding too much flour or over kneading.
I've never really had it cause an issue when you're cooking it later. I think it might just make it a bit toothier or chewier. But I mean, still compared to a box pasta, it's still going to be softer and rich.
Exactly. You'll really be able to tell the difference.
So all I'm going to do at this point is you do want to let your pasta dough rest. That's going to allow, you'll see there's quite a bit of flour on this right now. That's going to allow that extra flour to get absorbed. It's going to allow the gluten to rest, and it's going to make life a lot easier. And again, it helps develop the texture. It's all about texture. If we made these other swaps over last night, so all I did was I left them in the fridge until about an hour before we started. So since we're hoping to use this one later in this stream, I'm just going to leave this out, and hopefully it has enough time to rest. I'm just going to set that to the side. You want to let it rest about 20 to 30 minutes. 30 minutes is better, but 20 minutes is doable. Yeah. I have rolled it out with less, and it's not that bad. Just okay. So at this point, the last thing we're going to prep before we start getting into shaping is the filling for the ravioli. Is that what we were doing next?
Yes.
Okay. Can I actually have, yeah, that'll work. So this, again, will be another recipe that will be sent to you. I call it a 3+ cheese, because technically it uses 3 cheeses, but you can totally add more cheeses to it by using a cheese blend. I decided more cheese is better. So I'm actually using a 6 cheese blend plus ricotta plus more Parmesan, which actually is in this. So technically it's a 7 cheese, sorry.
Yeah.
So at this point, to make the filling, it's quite simple, nothing crazy about it. You put the ingredients in, mix it all till it's combined, and taste for flavor.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to start with the ricotta. I tend to add more ricotta than all the other things because the ricotta helps keep the filling together, which makes forming the ravioli later a little bit easier, in my opinion.
I'll get that for you.
Thank you.
And since, like we said, this is all just getting mixed together, so you can move on to your next ingredient while I'm opening this frustrating ricotta cheese.
Didn't think to do that ahead of time. So with the shredded cheese, okay, we should have opened up everything ahead of time. You can open that now. Okay, so the Parmesan, thank you. I'm just using a store-bought grated Parmesan cheese. If you have fresh Parmesan cheese, it's always better, but we're gonna go with what I have. And that's about a 1/4 cup. And I eyeball a lot of things. So about a 1/4 cup of Parm and 3/4 cups, give or take, of ricotta. There may be some spinach in the ricotta now. That's okay. And again, I'm actually not afraid to put almost a full cup in there because that's what's going to keep it together. Here, there we go. Boop. Do you have the lid for that, or did I?
Yes.
Here it is. There you go. And then about a half a cup of any kind of shredded cheese that you want. Mine just happens to be a 6 cheese blend because cheese. And just like pasta, making this filling is not an exact science and shouldn't be an exact science. You should go for flavor over measurements. Give me my garlic. Okay. The recipe calls for a 1/4 teaspoon of garlic. That's a half teaspoon. I think a 1/4 teaspoon is too small. What do you think? More garlic?
More garlic.
More garlic.
Always more garlic.
Always more garlic.
It's so healthful and flavorful.
I actually did more like a teaspoon of garlic because garlic is delicious. And that's really the only overpowering flavor you're going to get in there. Tablespoon of basil.
Jess, could you tell us once more how much of the shredded cheese you put in?
About a half a cup, give or take. And then I think I'm up to salt and pepper. I have a lot of sound effects. I apologize. Okay, there we go. I'm going to have ricotta cheese hanging off of everything. So I have fresh cracked black pepper. If you have store-bought ground pepper, that's fine. It's about a 1/4 cup. I'm just going to kind of eyeball it.
We have a couple questions in chat. Can you use fresh garlic in this recipe?
Sure.
Yep. If you are looking to make sure that it's not going to be an overpowering strong flavor, you can just cook your garlic a little bit ahead of time. Cooking garlic helps to mellow out the flavor and develop it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And then another question, what is a substitute that you might use instead of basil?
Oregano, parsley. If you have Italian seasoning mix, pretty much any, you can. The reason why I chose this recipe is it's very versatile. If you don't have basil or you don't like basil, what green herb do you like? Put it in there. If you have leftover spinach in the fridge, cook down the spinach like you did for the pasta, throw it in there. I think when I made this with Anthony, what we say we put in there, mushrooms and artichokes.
Yes, mushrooms and artichoke, delicious combination.
We just cooked them down a little bit, again, trying to get some of that moisture out. And then we just threw it in there and just kind of added more ricotta as needed. Can you grab me a fork, please?
Yes.
That's what I love about this. It's the base, and then you can just add more things to it as you see fit. But at the same time, if you want just a cheese ravioli, this is a good filling. So I'm just going to mix it and get it combined. And I don't know if you saw, I did put a pinch of salt in here as well, because I think the original recipe called for garlic salt and then more salt. I didn't like that. So,
and now once this is mixed up, it doesn't really need to rest. This is just good to go in your pasta. So you can do this ahead of time. It can go in the fridge, or you can do this right after you're done letting your pasta dough rest. It's just filling that's going to be the delicious heart and center.
Tell me if it needs any more garlic or anything.
I think it's perfect.
Perfect. So again, I'm just making this so it's one less thing to do when we get to rolling out the ravioli. So I'm just making it ahead of time, and I'm going to set it aside until we get to the ravioli.
Kitty wants to say hello.
My cat wants to say hello. So does anyone have any questions about making the pasta dough or making the filling?
We have one question from Poofy. Why did you not like the garlic plus salt combo? Garlic salt plus salt combo.
Seriously, because of where I live. It's very humid. garlic salt doesn't last here without becoming a brick.
That's a fair point.
So I would much rather use garlic powder and then salt it the way that I want, rather than actually keeping garlic salt in the house.
A very fair point.
And then you can always add more garlic and not necessarily more salt if you don't want.
That's correct.
It's more of just control. I like having control over my pasta.
So now we're going to move on to these doughs, correct?
Yes, we
So
are.
we can start off, I think, with the orecchiette, if that makes sense for you.
Mhm. Sure, and we were gonna try a little bit of both, right?
Yes, so these different doughs do have different textures. One's made with semolina, one's made with the 00 flour. So the semolina is probably going to be a little bit stiffer unless we made it incorrectly. And
It's stiffer.
with
I could probably knock you out with it.
Oh, that's true. That is quite a dense ball. With the stiffer doughs, you're going to get different reactions when you're making your shapes, when you're making the orecchiette, or whether you're rolling out the pasta dough to cut it into strips. Stiffer dough is going to hold up a little better. It's going to keep its shape more, and it's going to be less reactive to your touch. So you're going to put a little bit more elbow grease in when you're making your shapes.
So this is the red wine dough, and just to give you an idea, when I told you about the poke test, it springs up. I could see it a lot more with this. Now this, I'm going to add a little bit more flour because it is sticky. It's not sticking to my hands, but it is a bit stickier than I would like to work with right now. So I'm just going to take a little bit. Whenever you're not working with dough, keep it wrapped up because it will dry out, which is not fun. And that's a lot of work to get wasted because it dried out on you. So all I'm going to do, again, I'm going to add a little bit more flour because I think it's a bit too sticky. I usually give a little preemptive knead, again, to incorporate a little bit more of that flour. And then at this point, this is the arts and crafts section, by the way. So to make the orecchiette, did you want to make some with me?
You do a demonstration first, and then we'll jump into it together.
Okay. So what we're going to do, we're going to pretend this is Play-Doh, and we're going to make a worm, basically. This dough is actually still a little cold, so it's springing back a little bit more. But if it was room temperature, it should roll out much easier. Okay. So I'm going to roll it out as best as I can. And again, I'm struggling because it's still kind of cold. So at this point, I'm just going to cut it in half. And this is just so I can get to the amount of dough that I need to make an orecchiette. Now, if you don't know what an orecchiette is, I have been told orecchiette means little ears.
That is correct.
That is correct. Okay, I meant to check my research on that, and I didn't. So basically, the idea is what we're going to do: get a rope, hopefully longer than what I have here, and we're just going to make little pillows to start out with. Should I get closer, do you think?
If we can, yeah. Let me do that.
We're going to zoom in a little bit, just so you can see what I'm doing, because you'll need to actually see the movement. But first thing, so we're going to roll out the rope, and we're just going to get little pillows of dough. If they're sticking to each other, add more flour. You really can't have too much flour. And some of these I might actually make smaller just because of how the dough is working out for me.
And the reason you can't really have too much flour at this point is because these are going to be the final pieces. So once you're done shaping your pasta, if you think there is too much flour on it and you don't want it to get absorbed, you can just dust it off with your hands. We're also going to suggest that you put a little dusting of flour on it when you store these, because otherwise they'll stick together. So you really need that outer coating of flour to make sure that you've got distinct pieces of pasta instead of just a big clump of vaguely shaped stuff. We're also going to usually suggest that you put it in the freezer if you're not planning on cooking it right away. And it is good to let your pasta rest at least for 30-ish minutes before you cook it if it's fresh and you're making it right away.
It does help to dry it. It's not necessary. I'm sitting down here because this is easier for me. So at this point, we've got the little pillow of dough. The only tool, very high tech, you'll need is a butter knife, preferably with some form of a serrated edge Age.
Edge. Edge is the word you're looking for.
I think edge is the word I'm looking for. If your butter knives don't have that, I have done it with like a steak knife. You just have to be a bit more gentle.
We do have a couple questions.
Yes.
How thick should the rope that you're making your pillows out of be, and how long should each pillow be?
Basically, as you saw, I have a very small rope because the dough is not working with me. It's not so much what the rope looks like or size, it's more of just how much dough. And really at that point, it's just how big do you want your noodle to be?
Exactly. There's nothing about making this shape a different size that's going to make it a worse pasta.
Yep.
Traditionally, orecchiette, I think, are about, I'm bad with the distances, I think about a 3/4 of an inch in diameter.
But you can make them bigger. What's kind of fun about a homemade pasta, they're not all going to be the same size unless you're
Exactly.
weighing them. And I don't have the time for that. So, I mean, you can see right here, I've got a very big piece and a much smaller piece. I would probably go for this one, which is, what would you say, about a 1/4 inch?
Yep.
About a 1/4 inch or so. And it's just a little pillow. And these I'm probably going to cut down. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your little pillow. I just want to make sure you can see this here. And you're going to take that serrated edge as to the best of your ability, and you're going to take it, you're going to scrape it across the dough. It's going to tear the dough a little bit. You don't want to tear a hole into it, but it's going to stretch and tear the dough, and it's going to make a little bit of a disc. So I just hold it so it doesn't slide on me. Put the knife on it and just pull. And then you want to kind of flip it back around on your thumb because it's going to make a little cup. And on one side, not sure how well you can see it, but you can see the tears. That's going to help collect sauce. And that's really the trademark sign of what this particular shape is. Whoops, and I'm dropping it. This dough, I'm telling you, is a little bit softer and it's not holding that cup as much as I would like. But as we let it dry, it will actually do that for us. So some of these, again, I'm going to cut these. So just to give you an idea of what we did, of what I did again, was I just held it to keep it from moving, put the knife into it, and you press down a little bit, and then just drag it. Oops, and see, I'm ripping it. And then once you do that, you flip it so those tears and that texture is on the outside of the cup. And I have a hole in mine.
And this is such a beautiful little shape. I really do like the you know, what's best about this is there are a lot of pastas designed to collect sauce with the holes in them. And oftentimes that requires you to have an extruder, which can be a fairly expensive tool to use. But this can be made with just a butter knife and still get that kind of texture that's designed to hold on to sauces. And it really elevates your cooking to the next level with just a simple tool.
And it just looks pretty.
It does.
I love to do this shape with a spinach pasta, because then I'd say they look like leaves. And those tears actually look like the veins in a leaf. So that's just, you know, me being kind of artistic. So at this point,
I'm gonna get in here and see if I can do it. You know, take a little pillow here, make sure you pinch it down and start that pushing action. Make sure you're getting those tears and trying not to make that happen. And that's what a failed orecchiette looks like. But you can still just ball that dough back up and try again.
Yep.
If you do find this shape difficult, we are going to show you a couple of other shapes that are easier to do, even if you don't have a pasta roller like we do with just a knife and a rolling pin. And that's the poor man's orecchiette for someone who's scared to rip pasta.
Yeah, once you get the movement down, you can go faster with it. And they definitely all look a little bit different. I'm not a pasta granny who has done this for 90+ years. This is a shape I just started doing, like, what did we say, about a year ago? But it is fun and it is easy once you get the amount of pressure that you need and the technique.
And we're going to try making the same shape with the other semolina dough as well, just to show you the differences. You should be able to see with the semolina dough, it is a little stiffer, so it should hold its shape better. It should hold that cup. As you can see, these are kind of flattening out with time. They're losing a little bit of their shape, but they will keep those ridges that we were able to get into it, or that Jess was able to get into it.
That's a good one. Yeah, gravity is the bane of this particular dough, apparently, with the shape, but that's okay. It's homemade. It's not supposed to look like you bought it at the store.
It's very true. That's part of the character. And even if it does get a hole like that one, it's still going to cook up properly.
It's still going to taste like pasta.
If you're doing this shape with your kids, if you're cooking with your family, there's no reason to reach for perfection. You just want to get better as you test out your skill. So you don't need to, there's nothing, this is a perfectly correct and beautiful shape.
It looks like an ear.
It does look a lot more like an ear.
The idea is like the outside part is a little bit thicker. Again, that's going to help catch the sauce. The sauce will get caught in those little cracks from the ripping and or the cup, depending on how it gets in there. You stole my knife.
I did steal your knife. Sorry.
Thank you.
And we did have a question from Diane.
Yes.
Have you ever made your own pasta shapes and gotten creative with it?
No. Creative, no. I'm not that creative when it comes to pasta. I have made cavatelli. I actually have I don't know what happened to the board. I was going to show it, but I have a board to make cavatelli, which is kind of like a handmade shell, but much thicker. Those you can easily do without the board too. You just won't have the cool ridges. I've made farfalle, the butterflies or the bow ties. Those are time consuming, but very rewarding when you make them. What else have I made?
Well, you've tried fusilli, right? And this is the perfect time for us to talk about fusilli because we did get a question over email about fusilli, and we're also going to try that with both doughs as well. Fusilli is a fun shape. It actually refers to two different shapes of pasta depending on who you're talking to. There's one kind of fusilli that is also called rotini. That is an extruded pasta, so we cannot show that to you.
I don't have an
Extruded pastas, for those of you who don't know, are pastas that are pushed through a hole to form a particular shape. So to shape rotini, which is a single spiral, you would push the dough through a particular shape and spin it as you were taking it out, and then cut it as you got.
It actually
a long
spins
enough
on its
noodle.
way out.
Does it spin on its way out too?
There's a couple of different ways, but the ones that I know that actually, it's like a spiral, and as it goes through, it spins it and cuts it.
One of these days I will get an extruder. But there's another shape that is also referred to as fusilli, and it is basically any shape that you take and spiral around a tube. And fusilli just means spiral. So in this case, we're going to make the most basic form of fusilli.
We're going to use my beautiful metal straw, for lack of other tools at the moment.
And you're just going to roll out a thin roll of dough like that, and then you're going to spiral it around the straw. And then if it's well floured enough,
which it's not,
which it's probably not, it should slide off the bottom.
This is, it's science. It's fine. This is fine.
Part of the reason we're trying this with two different doughs is the question that we got was,
yeah, hold on.
Fusilli often can, and other shaped pastas can often lose their shape when you cook it. And someone was asking, is there any way to make it so that the fusilli is more likely to keep its shape? There's a couple of strategies you can do. You can dry your pasta before cooking it. So the more you dry your pasta out, whether you have a complex tool like a dehydrator, or you have just a freezer that you could leave it in for a while, the more you let your pasta dry before cooking it, the more it's going to hold its shape during cooking.
That's actually not horrible. It's much thicker than I would do, but this dough is not cooperating at the moment.
This dough that we've made is a particularly soft dough. So if you've got a dough that's ending up looking like this, and you really want to make a shape that you want to be able to hold up to cooking your pasta, you're going to need to add more flour. You're going to have to treat it carefully. And you're going to have to just make a shape, test it. If it's not holding its shape while just sitting on your table as well as you'd like it to, add a little bit more flour in, knead it a little bit more, and then make another test shape. But then when you let these dry, they will hold up a little bit better. With a lot of these fresh pastas, though, they're designed to be a little more floppy than your store-bought pastas, which are made with semolina dough.
Not always.
Sometimes.
Durum wheat.
So we'll take a look at what our semolina dough will do for both of these orchette and this
This is very thick.
this fusilli shape. But those are our recommendations if you're trying to really make it hold up to that pasta water. Is fresh dough pasta also does not have to cook as long as store-bought pasta. So it may be that you just need to cook it for a little bit less long, and just make sure you're checking your fresh pasta when you cook it to see if it's reaching that point that you want it to be at.
It's gonna go longer than an hour. You realize that, right?
Oh yeah. That's
Okay.
fine.
I'm just gonna grab a little bit of the semolina dough, and because I've never actually made orecchiette with the semolina dough. I've always done linguine or something, which is what we're gonna end up doing with most of that. And this you can see is a bit drier. It's dense. I mean, you can hear it, which is what makes it actually pretty good for rolling and cutting using a pasta roller. So for the sake of time here, oh yeah, it doesn't slide back as much.
Yay.
So just to give, whoops. Hey, pasta making, you're supposed to have fun making pasta.
Exactly.
And
That's
we're
what we're
having
here
fun
for.
making pasta. So it's a bit drier. A lot of people like semolina because of the flavor, the texture. The Bob's Red Mill semolina flour is actually not as finely ground as all purpose. It's a bit grainier, which some people really like. How'd it come out? Oh, that's
Pretty good.
beautiful. That's what it's supposed to look like.
So you can see those big tears. It's a bit of a struggle to make sure you're doing the right pressure to get a tear that deep, but to not tear the dough all the way in half. But that is exactly the kind of texture you're looking for in your orchette.
Yeah. So
Anthony,
that
if you
actually
bring-
worked out.
Yeah, if you can
much
bring it
better.
down just a little bit so it's in focus.
Can
Oh,
you
beautiful.
bring the camera down just a little bit so it's in focus.
Focus better, camera.
Does that look good?
I think if you bring your hand down, it can
Oh, bring your hand down.
Ta-da!
looks beautiful.
And actually yours came out better, so.
Speaking of the camera, Anthony, I don't know if you saw this question. Someone was just asking, technically speaking, what camera you're using there.
For the pasta cam,
Yep.
it's a Logitech C920 webcam. And it's on a, whatever this is called.
I was about to unscrew this, but this is actually on a stand. So the stand is separate than the camera. And most web cameras that you'll buy will have a little screw hole that you'll be able to use this kind of a stand with. So if you're interested in what kind of stand this is, we'll see if we have that info afterward as well.
Might take me a while, but yes. I've had this stand forever.
So we've made a few orchette, and we're going to try out the fusilli as well, see how well that holds up its shape with the semolina dough. And then we're going to move on to rolling out some doughs. So what we might try to do in the interest of time is roll out both the semolina dough and the spinach dough at the same time. Is that a
Yes,
shot?
absolutely.
And we'll start with the spinach dough, in fact.
Just to give you an idea of what the spinach dough is looking like, there's still some flour, but it has absorbed some of that extra flour. And that's actually probably pretty good.
Excellent.
Was I trying one more of the spirally things with this?
Yes. Let's see what that fusilli shape looks like with this slightly drier, more stable semolina dough.
You still want to probably get it smaller than what I'm doing, but for the sake of time. Okay. I'm going to take it, fingers crossed, just roll it. I'm just going to slide it off. So it
And
does
you can
hold
see-
it, but it is coming apart a little bit. I think that's because the dough's too thick. But at this point, while it's holding its shape, you're going to want to let it dry before you put it in the water. If you were to put it in the water right now, it's just going to turn into a worm.
Exactly. It will become like just a worm, just a worm floating in the water.
So it is possible to do it without an extruder. It is a bit time consuming and could be frustrating until you get the method down.
Absolutely.
Traditionally, to make shapes like this, the grannies use wooden spokes. I've heard that they use like spokes from umbrellas to make it, which is really cool. I don't know, because I have not been able to find a proper thing to make them that way. So I'm using my metal straw because priorities. Can you, yep.
Yes, and I will get these. And you're actually going to set up the pasta roll.
Yes,
real quick
I'm
while
gonna
I do this.
move this back up here because we're not going to need to be that close anymore. So if something isn't focused, please let me know. So while Anthony's getting rid of this, I want to talk about my pasta machine. I want to preface this by saying if you don't have a pasta machine, you can still make pasta. This just makes life easier.
Yeah, the alternative to the pasta machine is just rolling out your pasta with a rolling pin on a board like this. A little time consuming, depending on how sticky it is, and springy it is, it can take a couple of passes, but this really helps to make it exceptionally easy.
Yep. This is just a hand crank pasta machine, which I'm going to attach over on the side. It's got a knob, which will help me determine the thickness. When you're rolling out pasta in one of these, you always go from the widest setting down to whatever thickness you want. How thick do you like your pasta in a ravioli?
Relatively thick.
Relatively thick?
Yeah,
okay.
not too crazy.
See, now if I were making it for myself, the thinner the better. So for me, I've got to screw this in here, and I probably should have had someone deal with this beforehand. We're not going to need that. We're not going to need
Not for a ceiling? Okay.
No.
We're done with the water.
We're done with the water.
The water.
Get the water out of here.
If you
Okay.
have any questions while we're getting this set up, feel free to drop them in chat now. If anybody does need to leave right at 3 o'clock, obviously we are going to run a little bit over. But like we said before, this is being recorded for YouTube, so we will have that available for you very shortly after the class. If anybody wants it, just email us. And if you have any questions, you can feel free to email those to us as well. We'll answer them at any point after the talk.
Sorry, I like talking. Oh gosh, this is not working for me.
I believe in you.
I'm glad you do. I'm glad I have this machine because we would not be getting you any pasta.
I know, right?
Especially with all of the issues I'm having with this right now. There we go. So I'm just attaching this over to the side, and we're going to turn the camera a little bit so you can see. Why did I think that this was a good idea to set this up on camera? Why didn't you talk me out of this?
No, I don't judge. We've done pasta streams before.
But I had everything set up. And actually, I don't even think I did this for my pasta stream. I think I just did shapes. Okay, so here's the pasta machine. And to do this, let me get more flour. There's my dough. I'm just going to cut off small portions, kind of like we've been doing. That'll be good to start. We'll get 2 of them going. Wrap it up, please. So what I'm going to do, I've got
real
this set to the widest. Yep.
Anthony, I don't know if there's any way to kind of fix what we're looking at here. It is sideways.
It is actually going to be sideways.
I apologize.
It's the nature of the stand. We don't have 2 camera stands, but you will just be seeing us lower dough into a roller and then bring it back out onto the bench. And we're just going to really show you that like 2 times, and then we'll be working on the bench again.
Sounds
I'm
good.
going to put Anthony to work to roll or something, and we're going to go from there. So one thing I do have to do with this before I use it is I have to clean it. And to clean it, because it's all metal, I can't wash it. So you clean it. Here's the camera. I clean it by grabbing a scrap of dough and just running it through a couple of times. That's going to pick up any dust, any leftover pieces from previous uses. It just helps kind of clean it and give you a fresh thing to work with. And then this just gets thrown away. Okay.
I can unscrew this. I can actually hold it. Give me one moment.
Okay, I hope no one gets motion sickness. Could have warned me.
Swap over to face cam.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Tell me if that looks good.
Pasta can. Right there, don't move. Okay, so all I'm going to do is flatten this out a little bit. And I'm going to start rolling it through on the widest setting. It's a little tough at first, which is perfectly fine. And what we're going to, this is kind of kneading it a little bit more. It's helping develop it, and it's also developing the rectangle shape. So after the first one, I'm going to just fold it in like an envelope and pass it back through. Did you hear that?
I did.
That popped. I'm just going to fold it over one more time. This is helping me get a nice long rectangle sheet as needed. And I put it through a couple of times. And then at this point, we are going to want to go incrementally down. So I'm going to go down to the next size. So it did bring these two rollers in a little bit. And it's going to go a little bit thinner. And I'm going to say we're going to go down to a 4 or 5.
Yeah, that sounds perfect.
Though actually, this is the linguine. So yes, okay. So I've gone down to 2. And that's actually going to work out better if we're going to do the linguine because this is much thinner than I want it to be for ravioli in terms of width. Going to go to 3. And you can see it's stretching nicely. It's not breaking. The sides aren't cracking, which is nice. That's how you know it's a good moisture to dry ingredients combination. All right, let's go down to 1 more. And then I'm going to show you how I would make fettuccine.
Also, Jess, your mom likes to add in that she likes 4 on ravioli and finds that 5 breaks.
Okay, good to know. Good to know.
Expert
ravioli.
advice from mom.
Okay. I usually go between the 2, but she's been making ravioli more recently.
Do you want to swap to face cam and I'll reattach this?
Yeah, because we don't need to show
Rolling anymore. Oh, Lord.
Where's my cutter?
Oh, good question. You want to try?
Oh, there it is. Okay.
Where did you put your cutter?
I don't know. Okay, so my pasta machine came with cutters. One's a fettuccine and one's like an angel hair. All this does is it attaches to the machine, which I can show you like this. And then you just use the crank to decide whichever one. If you get a machine, my mom can attest to this because she's gotten a couple. You can get other attachments for different types of cuts. If you want like a spaghetti, a linguine, I don't know which one that she just got, but it's a fancy looking one. You can get attachments for this, no problem. Should I be back down to pasta can? Okay. There's my pasta. We're going to do just a bit on the side, a little bit. No, maybe not. Okay. So all I'm going to do, because I'm actually going to go back to face cam for a minute, just so you can see the pasta cutter. All I'm going to do, I'm going to do the fettuccine. So I'm going to feed it through this wider one.
And if you don't have a pasta machine like this,
Thank you.
with a dough cutter, you can do this by hand as well. You can either take a pizza cutter and roll it from one end of the dough across to the other side, just trying to take as much care as you can to keep things even. Or you can also take your dough, you can roll it into a spiral and use your knife there, and it will make very even cuts all the way along the middle.
However, if you are doing the pizza cutter method and they're all different shapes, it's homemade. It's not supposed to be the same. And I mean, you'll even see here, I've got a couple of different weird shapes because of where it was in the dough. So even then, even if you have the pasta roller, it's not always going to be perfect. But now we have some beautiful green fettuccine. Would you like to start rolling for the
Yes.
ravioli?
Thank you. Yeah.
So again, yeah, here's one. I'm going to scrap that. Keep things well floured. I'd like to toss things. Yes, always start on the widest 0. And then at this point, I like to make little nests, which looks prettier when it's done in a fancy place. I do a bunch of little nests. How you doing there?
Doing good.
And then I actually freeze them individually like this. Once they're frozen solid, I put them all into a Ziploc. And then just whenever they are needed, you just grab however many bunches you want. I'm not measuring these, so I can't say they're like 2 ounces. They're not a serving. I don't know. Grab a couple of bunches and throw it right in the pasta water from a frozen state. Start stirring it as soon as it hits the water. You are struggling.
You know, because I'm trying to stay out of your camera.
It's fine. They're looking at this camera.
That's true.
Same thing with your shape pastas. You can dry them all separate and individual. But if you're going to freeze them like on a tray individually before you put them all in a box or in a bag. So then that way they'll be frozen completely. They're not going to form one big clump, which is not pleasant when you try and cook it later. That's beautiful. My sous chef's doing a good job. And we still have a spoon. I'm going to grab another spoon.
So I'm going to switch back over to this camera. We are already on 2, rolling out at thickness of 2. And we're just passing it through twice to make sure that we don't rip the dough. Because with fettuccine, if you rip the dough at some point, it's a bit less of a problem than it is if you rip your ravioli dough. Ravioli, you really want to be able to make a full seal so that when you're boiling your pasta, your filling does not leach out into the water and get lost. You want all that deliciousness to be inside the ravioli.
And that's beautiful how you've got that the full width. So to make ravioli, I actually have a ravioli stamp. Don't need to have a ravioli stamp. Got a pizza cutter? That'll work. Mine, I stamped down, obviously the pizza cutter, you would be cutting usually into squares, but I don't see why you couldn't do other funky shapes. If you have cookie cutters or biscuit cutters, you could use those, something that's sharp enough to go through everything. What are we on, 4?
4, yeah.
Beautiful. Okay, can we switch it back to pasta cam now? Because that is not a flattering view. Okay, so here's the dough. Let me fix the camera just a smidge, maybe. There we go. All right, so here's our dough. And what we're going to do is we're going to put the filling and then we're going to fold it over. Thank you. I already have them. Depending on your cutter will depend on how much filling. You don't really want to overfill because that will cause them to explode in the pasta water. But at the same time, use your best judgment. For this particular pasta cutter, which is, what would you say, about 1.5 inches in diameter, I use a teaspoon and a half of filling. And when I say teaspoon, I mean like a spoon, not the actual teaspoon. So I'm just going to line a couple of dollops here. And it doesn't matter if they're close together because it's going to be less waste if we do it that way. I'm going to try and get 5 raviolis out of this. I have to admit, this filling smells delicious.
Mhm.
There we go. And we're gonna make it work. It's fine. All right, so at this point, so I'm gonna be able to get 5 out of this, and I'm gonna have scrap dough that I do reuse as much as possible. I'm just gonna take the other end, I'm gonna fold it over, and I'm gonna press out air. I flatten them a little bit so you can actually see where the raviolis are gonna be. If there's less air, less chance of explosion, because the air is not going to expand when it's hot. Oops.
Your mom asks, what time is dinner?
Well, you know me, I don't eat until like 9 o'clock at night anyway. So you could probably leave now and get here. All right, this one on the end might be a little bit interesting. So again, at this point, if you don't have a stamp and you just have a pizza cutter, or you can use a knife, just chop, cut in between, and you will need to press to make sure everything is sealed. You can use water like you would in a dumpling. I've never needed it, but again, I have a press or a stamp that actually does a pretty good job of sealing. So at this point, I just get the ravioli in the center, press down to help seal, and pull it out. And boom. Nice and thick. I could actually put a little bit more filling in that probably. Could you actually get me the pizza cutter? I'd rather try it with the pizza cutter. I've never. It is over on the left.
On the left.
Might be under the flour because it got washed last night. There's also a ravioli cutter that looks like a pizza cutter but has the ridges. So you can get those as well. I love this stamp. I think they make beautiful little raviolis, and the stamp is pretty darn affordable in my opinion, from Amazon. I think it was like $4 or $5, if that. So if I don't have a stamp, I'm going to slide this over a little bit. I'm just going to use a pizza cutter and just cut in between, pressing down good because that's going to help seal it. And I've got a jagged edge, so I'm just going to seal on all sides. And then I always make sure, you should see a nice seal. I hope you can see that and it's not super blurry. So then boom, I've got a square one. And again, you could do it with a knife. I've never done it with a knife, but it is definitely possible to do with things you already have at home.
So we'll continue making a couple of these raviolis, but at the moment we've shown you all of the different skills that we were planning to show you today. So if anybody has any extra questions, now's the time to drop them in chat. For those of you that have been following us along, we hope this has been easy enough to follow along.
I forgot people were following along. I'm sorry. I hope we didn't lose you completely. I forgot that was a possibility.
But this has been a really fun talk for us to give. This is one of our favorite activities. So being able to have you guys join us and MyTac inviting us to share our skills has been a real treat.
This one might explode. There's a lot of air in it. You can actually, I can push it around. So yeah, I hope out of everything, we showed a lot today, but I hope, my hopes for this was that you would just try it.
Exactly. Look at all the delicious stuff we've started to make that we'll be continuing making for a couple more hours afterward. That's not even under the camera. Ta-da, you've got your lovely shaped fettuccine. You've got wonderful different ravioli styles that you can try out at home. And the orecchiette are my favorite shape of pasta as well. So I really hope you'll give those a try at some point. And even these little fusillium. Thank you very much for emailing out about that.
This actually dried quite a bit. It's holding its shape.
And even this one, it's a little wiggly. It will fall apart when you put it into the water. So that one didn't solve your problems, but this one if you let it dry a lot longer, that one will actually hold up its shape. So I hope that helps out a little bit for you and your question. Any other questions from the chat?
And roll the dough a little bit thinner than I did.
Can you poke holes with a fork in the one that has a little too much extra air in it to keep it from exploding? Would you suggest that? Have you ever done post-sealing ravioli
I
repair?
don't see why you couldn't. Give me a fork. I'm all for science. Which one had the air in it? That one's pretty good. This one. Yeah, I don't see why you couldn't. And press it out and then kind of pinch it back shut.
And I mean, the worst case scenario,
It
if
explodes
does
anyway.
leak, is it'll just leak a little bit of the filling. But if it has that air trapped in it, there's a pretty good chance it is going to burst anyway. So you got a good chance of minimizing the damage if you do that.
I mean, that actually worked out pretty good. I can't really see where I sealed it. So yeah, never tried it. But I don't see why not.
Question from Debbie: can you use whole wheat flour? Any changes that you would suggest for that?
I don't see why not. I've never used whole wheat flour. I think it really depends on the gluten content. I don't see why not. I'd actually have to do some research on that because I do know some people do their own flour blends and have done whole wheat stuff, but I don't remember if they've blended it with other things or if they've done just strictly whole wheat, but I'm sure there's a way.
And the last question that I see, do you freeze your fresh pasta or just let it dry out? What's your strategy?
Yes.
It's an either or situation.
It's an either or. Where I am right now, I don't know if you can see my tiny fridge with my tiny little freezer. It's an apartment-sized fridge and freezer combo. If I were making pasta a couple months ago, I'd be drying it because there's no space in my freezer. I now have a chest freezer in the other room, so I would be more than likely freezing it just because it's easier. It's a bit more stable. But there are tools that you can get if you're doing your fettuccinis or your angel hair to dry. You can get like little pasta trees where you just hang them so they can air dry overnight. If you're doing like a nest like this, I would make sure you have a fan on it so there's constant air circulation. Otherwise, you're going to get mold in the middle before it dries. I have made orecchiette and dried them, and they came out pretty good. But at the same time, they only really last about maybe a month in an airtight container because they are still going to mold. There's still egg in this. So my general rule of thumb, if I have space in my freezer, if I'm doing an egg dough, I tend to freeze them. If it's just a flour and water dough, I feel much better about drying it and keeping it, making sure it's an airtight so moisture's not getting in there. It's not going to last the apocalypse like a box pasta will, but you can dry it for a bit. And obviously a ravioli, you can't dry a ravioli.
Yeah, it's got that filling in it. That needs to be taken care of, and that requires the freezer.
But definitely when you're making them, you want to freeze them individually on a tray as opposed to sticking them all in a bag.
Yes, freeze them individually on a tray, and then you can put them into a bag. And once they are fully frozen, but otherwise you'll get that sticking that you see actually in store-bought ravioli bags.
Yes. And when you go to cook them, don't defrost them. Get your water boiling, go into the freezer, and chuck it in right from a frozen state. It'll take an extra minute or two. Then if I were to go and boil this right now, this would probably take about 2 or 3 minutes. From a frozen state, I do about 3 or 4, maybe 5, depending on how thick it is. This is thicker than I would make it usually. But yeah.
Excellent. Well, I think that's the last of our questions. So we're going to say goodbye to everybody, and we will, if you would like a link to the YouTube video, we will send that out to you. Just give us an email at mytech-office.com, not .com, mytech-office@mit.edu. Check out our other offerings, including our other virtual offerings at www.mit.edu. Why did I put myself in that situation? I already messed up the first one. And also, if you aren't subscribed, please subscribe to our newsletter because it's the quickest way for us to let you know what's coming up next. If you have any requests, if you've got any hobbies that you'd like to see videos for, email us, please, and we can do our research and see if we can find somebody to do a fun little activity like this again. Thank you so much for coming out. This has been wonderful. I'm realizing that I could have done this all on the face cam so that you could see us clearer, but that's the nature of
Technology and working from
technology and
home.
friendship. Thank you for coming out. Have an excellent day and enjoy the rest of
Thursday. Today's Thursday.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye. Good.